This is your chance to get involved in community radio Lake of the Ozarks with 89.3 The Key. Well, hi there. You are looking good this morning. And hopefully, as you watch us on the SRG Financial Advisors Key Radio in-studio live cam, we are looking good as well. Full complement in the studio. We'll talk with JR and Dave Maupin here shortly and get you started with the conclusion to JR's little unfortunate incident there in Mexico. A story we started to tell you about on Friday, but there was a little bit more to it, so we wanted to make sure and get all of that information in. Weather-wise today, let's take a quick peek at the forecast. Right now, 44 degrees in Osage Beach, looking at a high today of 49 with a slight chance of rain. Cloudy and rain developing after midnight, the low of 38. Looks like we could have some rain tomorrow, about a 95% chance. I would say that's a good chance for rain, and a high of 45, 53 and partly cloudy on Thursday. Some morning snow showers. It wouldn't be February without a little bit of snow. 36 on Friday. That precipitation chance for Friday at about 50%. Then Saturday, sunny and 49, partly cloudy and 57 on Super Bowl Sunday, which is already turning into a big fiasco. I don't know that a whole lot of people really watch much of what's going on the first couple of days, but apparently they've already had some issues with some people. But that is to be expected. It's Super Bowl, and all the crazies hang out there. 8:09 is our time. I want to send a shout-out to my buddy Matthew O'Connell. And Matthew is going to be starting up a company called Greenview Equipment Company, Highway 7 between EE and 5, just past reliable PWC. Farm implements, skid steerer attachments with tractors and trailers coming soon. So if you know Matt, welcome him in to the community. He's been a fixture around here forever. He is who I like to refer to as the hardest working man at the lake. He does work hard, very, very hard, as a matter of fact. And so congratulations, Matthew. Continued success, my friend. And as I said, you're going to tear him up. 8:10 is our time. Dave Maupin is here. Of course, we normally talk to Dave on Fridays. You are planning on coming back Friday, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes, sure. It's still kind of up in the...
I'm available.
You remember the dogwoods thing you got cooking?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of...
About the dogwoods, that's why we bring him in.
Not a lot of commitment.
And I don't know if you've listened to him on Fridays at all. I'm sure you have.
Of course.
He tells some incredible stories from his days with the LAPD.
I know.
I mean, some great stories.
Mm-hmm,
Stuff that you could write a book about.
Mostly true.
Mostly true stories from the LAPD.
Well, I had a lot of questions about my experience that I thought he could probably answer.
Yeah, I expected to get more texts, but I guess you didn't have your phone, so...
No, I did shoot a lot of texts out before they took my phone away for 2 weeks. I kind of constructed a little narrative of what happened.
Uh-huh.
Did you want to get to the weather before
I'm done.
Okay. Well,
JR is here, as you can tell. I was just getting ready to introduce you and let folks know again on Friday we had the conversation where initially we found out what happened when you were coming back to the United States and got caught up in the Mexican version of the TSA. And then ended up in jail and eventually went to prison. It was a pretty daunting experience, to say the least. And so we wanted to give you an opportunity to come back. And thank you, by the way, to both of you for coming back in here this morning and telling us a little bit more about the experience. If you're just joining us, JR got caught up in Mexico and had a very unfortunate experience when he was going through the process of leaving the country. They found a magazine in your briefcase, and it did contain some ammunition, but only one of the particular bullets in question was a hollow point. Right? Am I right with that?
I think that if it was all full metal jacket, I probably would have done 3 days in the federal jail and that'd have been it.
Uh-huh.
But that hollow point, that put me in the pen.
That's right.
And I should have been Kyle Busch. Did you hear this? I got 4 text messages last night about 8 o'clock. Kyle Busch ran into the exact same thing. He had. Did you see it?
I've heard about this happening to people. I hadn't heard about this particular thing.
Yeah, Google it, Bernsey. Kyle Busch. Exact same thing happened to him a week later. Same airport, same jail.
So he almost didn't make the race, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, they let him race. I don't know what was different.
Well, I think...
I don't know what's different. I mean, obviously, he's got a lot more pesos.
They probably wanted to make sure he was there for that. And no ifs, ands, or buts.
Maybe they figured the NASCAR crowd might actually invade Mexico if they didn't get him to that race.
There's danger of that happening.
Well, they did have the very first race in California, in L.A., at the Coliseum, so there was a good possibility some of that may have spilled over the border. So we want to pick up your story where we left off on Friday, and we were actually just kind of talking about moving from the federal jail to the, federal penitentiary.
So when I'm in the federal jail, I wanted to back up a little bit to that Saturday when I was taken to that federal jail, because there's something I didn't say last Friday, and that was that while I still had my phone, knowing they would take it from me the minute I went into the holding cell, I went ahead and told the story, and I let everybody at KRMS know, and I let everybody at Topsider know, I let everybody at the Villages know, and I sent it to Nate Rennie, because I wanted to make sure that the truth was out there. And I figured nobody's going to have my back better on Facebook than Rennie.
Sure.
So I made sure he knew the truth of the matter. And that was why I did it. And that's a lot of why I came in Friday, was to make sure that, haters are going to hate. Right. And I wanted to let everybody know that exactly what happened. If you think I'm a bad guy or did something wrong, then that's on you. But the messages, the text messages I've got, I'm not even going to start saying who all has sent me really, really, really good text messages and calls, because it's a lot of people. And so I feel very, very good about it.
So did you get some negative text messages? Were there people that sent you negative text messages?
One person said he was glad I was in jail. It didn't say it to me. He said it to a friend. And I'm not going to tell you who it was. When I heard that, I put a call into him. He didn't answer. He swiped me over to voicemail, and I texted him to call me. Still no word from him. And so I'm not doing anything with that right now.
Maybe he didn't anticipate you'd be getting out as quickly.
So
maybe he didn't expect a phone call.
I don't know. I'd like to, anyway, that's a different topic. Maybe we can discuss that over scotch tonight.
Yeah, we'll put that in the revenge column.
Me, thanks.
So anyway, I wanted to go ahead and tell you what was motivating me to send that text message and to be on the radio, to just basically to try to take control of the narratives, basically, is what I'm doing.
Make sure that the story that the people are hearing is from the source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
And that makes sense.
Well, yeah. It's because, Facebook is just it's a cesspool sometimes. So anyhow, last time we left off, I had been taken to the penitentiary. I had the manacles on my ankles and the bracelet, if you will, and a chain connecting the two, and was marched into this backside of the prison, into the security, between the garage and the basically it's like a checkpoint before you go into the prison. It's within the prison, but there's kind of like an administrative side and then the population side. So I go to that checkpoint, and they tell me to take off my shirt. I've got my Chico's dive shirt from Puerto Vallarta, and I've got my blue jeans, basically the stuff I was going to wear on the flight home. On the airplane, I had the jeans on already, because I know when I get to St. Louis, it's going to be cold. So they say, here's your new outfit, and it's tan. It's a tan shirt and tan pants, and the tan pants fall completely down off of me. So they're like 10 sizes too big. That'd fit you well, Bernsey. But they...
Hey, thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, you too.
How dare you?
They'd fit you okay, Dave.
Well, it's one size fits all, right? That's how it works.
So they went straight to my ankles. I was like, they don't speak English. And he's like, tough. So I'm pretty much holding up my pants now.
Right.
You know what they give me to secure it? Somehow the plastic bag my shirt came in. There you go. This is what you can use.
It's a belt.
As my belt.
Wow.
And so he says, now take down your drawer, your underwear. So I drop him all the way to my ankle, and he's like, no, just halfway down to my knee, basically checking. I guess, David, you know that people sneak stuff in through their undergarments. So there was that. So I'm back.
I think anything you would have tried to have snuck in would have come out probably a lot sooner, if you know what I'm saying, just from the whole experience.
There's no question. Remember I talked about having a night mask over my eyes? I had that in my pocket. I had meant to put that in my underwear, but I put it in my pocket. And by virtue of it being in my pocket, I was able to keep it. If it had been in my underwear, correct me if I'm wrong, it'd have been gone.
This is not a good searching technique these guys are using. They're not going into your pockets, but they're basically just looking at the clothes.
I'm sure I was patted down. They didn't ask me to take off all my clothes
so far,
and jump impressed. Up and down. And so I am taken to my first cell, and basically every eye, it seems like at least every eye is on me. And everybody's out. Everybody's out of their cells in the GP. And so I'm taken to, first of all, these cells are within a locked area themselves. It's like it's not A. A is the murderers. I don't know what a block it would be. Mm-hmm. It's not relevant. But there's like 5 cells that are all facing the soccer field, and the A cell's on the other side of that, which is where the murderers are. And so we don't have any interaction with those guys. So I spend all of, Tuesday I woke up in this federal jail. I've been to the courthouse, and now I'm at the penitentiary. And I'm very happy. This is very nice. Compared to where I just left, this is a 14 by 14 foot cell on 2 walls in the shape of an L. Is a 2 foot ledge, 2 feet off the floor. So there's 4 or 5 of us in there. When I go there's 5 of us. So I know I'm on the floor. And one of them ends up leaving. So now I'm on a bench at least. I told you I used a Coke bottle for a pillow. A full Coke bottle under pressure, and I was really glad to have it. And I did have my night mask. So compared to where I had just been, other than not having my Thomas Paine book, I was saying, like, I can do this for 8 days. This is great because I can see trees now. Before I couldn't even see outside. I could hear outside, but other than that, my view was concrete or steel. So they're playing soccer outside, and we have running water. They turn on the well once in a while, fills a tank that's in the room. It's just like a holding tank, but this has got a bowl on it like a parquet bowl that you're going to use to flush or to shower or whatever. So I have fresh water now, which is great. I think, I'm delivered. This is heaven. To where I just left.
Right. Your expectations are set so low at this.
Exactly. And I'm like, as long as I get a book, I can spend 8 days in this cell. And I talked about the tank and the toilet and the sink, not really the sink, but like a shower pan, if you will. This is behind a couple of stub walls that are up maybe 4 feet tall. So there's no privacy. But I think you get over those hang-ups when you're in this situation. You got to go, right? And there's a couple of things that I look back on that whenever we left the REU back during my vacation portion of my time, we had gone shopping in this little shopping center, and Jack and I needed to use the bathroom, and we went in there, and there was no lid or seat on the toilet. And Jack and I turned around and walked back out, and they're like, not doing that. Well, that would become the norm over my last 2 weeks, as never I would see a toilet lid or a toilet seat again. That's not something you see in Mexican jails and penitentiaries. There's no toilet seats. So, but there is a lot of fresh water, and they're actually, at least in my experience, a clean people. They all shower daily, at least in these prisons. In the penitentiary. Certainly there was no shower in the jail. This is now Tuesday night. Saturday morning, I had taken a bath in the room at the REU. So now I've gone all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday, and now it's Tuesday, all day Tuesday. This is basically 4 full days of me not having a shower or a bath. And so I'm not really ready to take a shower yet in this situation, but I know that that's coming. I'm going to have to. I know it's cold water. I'm not looking forward to it, but it was a long day Tuesday. I had been to court and all these things. So they came and got me, And every time they would come and get me, they would put me in handcuffs and march me through the GP, out through the security checkpoint, into the administrative side of the penitentiary, if you will. And the first trip was to the administrative office. And there's 3 guys working in there, and they knew a little bit of English. One of them did, the boss. Thankfully. So, up against the wall for the photographs, turn left, photograph, turn right, photograph, fingerprints, not just the tips of your fingers. And I went through this at the jail also, but also like all of your fingers and the palm and the edges. It's like 4 sheets of paper. And so I had to go through that. And then, of course, he's filling out this questionnaire, and we're trying to figure it out because it's in Spanish. And so he's got his computer pulled up, and he's got Google Translate on it. So when he's asking me a question, I'm like, I don't know. So he starts just asking these questions and letting me see it on his computer screen in English. And so we're able to fill out the forms. And the guy had a sense of humor, and he knew a little bit of English. And we ended up hitting it off. And it was really good. And that made it a lot easier. A guard had come in who knew some English and was asking me questions. Again, I felt like I could trust this guy. I ended up hitting it off pretty good with these 3 administrators that were filling out these forms and taking prints and photos. And it was going very well. In fact, I was showing them, here, I keyed in Luxury Lake Realty on their computer, and they're like, oh, that's you. What happened, And so...
Trying to get them to buy a condo, are you?
That's right. That's good. That's good.
So it was
always a salesman.
That's so funny.
I was feeling so much better after 3 days in solitary.
No, and just to be clear too, at this point, that there's a set time that you're going to be in here. You've already been advised.
I'm told it's 8 days, but there's no guarantees.
Right.
I'm told 8 days, but anything can go wrong. There's a lot of things that could have gone wrong.
Right.
I mean, it's a miracle I walked out of there.
Typically, Dave, you get about a week to 10 days, and then you can have a bond hearing. Isn't that normally the case?
Yeah, or even quicker than that in the U.S., I think. I mean, you get arraigned within 48 hours usually, and then, that's usually when they're going to talk about trying to get you out or not get you out,
right.
I think.
Well,
but this is a completely different set of rules.
That's what I'm saying.
This is Mexican jurisprudence we're discussing.
That's right. I'm also surprised not many of them speak English. You usually see more English speaking, but
yeah, none of the guards ever spoke English. One lady, when the paddy wagon backed up to the garage and we were photographed there and switched handcuffs, there was one lady that came over that knew English very well, and she was extremely nice. And I was like, is this a federal penitentiary, a state penitentiary? What is this? She's like, yeah, it's a county jail. Well, I think a county jail. I went to visit Michael McSorley in a county jail. I was thinking, hey, all right, this is great. Until I went through the security checkpoint, and now it's this big, giant outside prison. When you say penitentiary, you think you're inside, but it was all outside. It's like the mall for all intents and purposes.
So your cell opens up into like the soccer field?
Correct. There is no cells that open up into a corridor. Every cell is looking outside.
So they're kind of around the perimeter of this field, the cells.
No, you could probably pull it up on Google Earth, Cancun Central Prison. It's a lot of buildings and a lot of like open areas. Okay. There is a soccer field. There's a basketball court with cells on all sides of it on 2 stories. And there's a lot of just open courtyards, a lot of spaces, because during the daytime, that's when all the bodegas open. I mean, if you got pesos, you can go out and buy, whatever, milk, soda, groceries, anything you would need. I mean, they do feed you, but you don't have to eat the prison food if you got money.
So you can like supplement with whatever you can buy.
You could probably get by on $2.50 a day if you only ate just regular, one supper a night, you could. Now, if you doubled that, then a water's going to be $1. A liter of water would be $1, or 20 pesos. There's 2-liter bottles of soda.
And are these people civilians that are selling it, or these other inmates?
Inmates.
Okay.
Inmates.
But you don't really want to go out there and flash your cash too much, do you?
You see pesos moved a lot. It's not like they whip out a big wad and pull one off. It's just like they'll reach in their pocket and pull out a 50 peso or 20 or 100 or just whatever. it's 20-1. So if I say 20 pesos, it's $1.
It's just funny because, like, in a U.S. prison, money is like a big no-no.
Yeah.
Like, you are not allowed to have any U.S. currency on you at all.
You have like credit, don't you?
Yeah, you might have stuff on your books, but like for them on a search to find money on a prisoner in the U.S., that is a huge issue because you're talking about bribery of guards. There's all sorts of things that can mean. So that will usually create a complete lockdown for a housing unit. If they find even a $20 bill on somebody, you're not supposed to have any cash.
Yeah. So this is a lot different. And again, I need to reiterate, it's so much better than the federal. Unless you tell me it's different, it was a shock cell. But it was solitary to me for 2 days.
And so your roommates, cellmates, how are they?
They're awesome.
Okay.
One of them speaks English.
Perfect.
He's from Laos, and he was great.
So he's also a foreigner.
He was. He actually has a ranch there, and he was in there on murder charges. And he was cool. He's like, it's all good. I didn't do it. And I'll be out of here. And had a great outlook, super great outlook. In fact, he's like, you want anything to eat? Because he knows I don't have any money. I just got there. I can't come in with anything except my white shoes. So he buys me. Again, the guard has locked us in this cell. And so you can give money to the guard and he'll bring you food. But the vendors and the bodegas, they're not in this block. This is like lockdown. This is called the punishment cell. I thought it was my permanent cell. So I go in there and he's like, you want something to eat? I'm like, anything. I haven't eaten anything decent in several days. So brings me a hot dog. The guard brings me a hot dog. And it's so good. It's the best hot dog I've ever had in my life. It cost 100 pesos. And my friend from Laos just paid for it. I said, don't mention it. I'm like, well, great. Thank you very much.
I didn't come back to haunt you, did it?
No. The guard, after I left the administrative thing, he took me back in there. And that's when now my Laotian friend is in there. And we're talking, and I'm asking him all these questions. How many people are in here? How long are you here? What are you here for? All these questions. I'm just always so curious about all these things. And he's the only guy I've talked to since I got there, since, it's not the only guy, but it's whenever somebody's speaking English, you're really, really happy to hear that. Because if they had all spoken Spanish, I was basically alone. They were going to be talking Spanish. I wouldn't know what they were talking about. I didn't have a book. So I was really, really, really glad to meet this guy. So they come and get me again. Oh, let me back up to the administrative thing. I'm in the administration office, and we're kind of hitting it off and yucking it up, and I'm feeling pretty good. And I said, I need a book. They took my book. I don't have a book. Is there a library? And they're like, yeah, we got a library. I said, is there any English books in it? And he's like, yeah, we got English books. And I'm like, can this guard take me there now? He's like, yeah, he can take you there now. And I'm like, oh, thank heaven. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If I can have a book, I just learned this in solitary. If I can have a book, I can survive anything. So the guard comes and gets me. I don't think he likes me because he takes me back to the cell and locks me in. I'm like, what about, libro, the Spanish word for book, libro. And he's like, later. Right now, he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. So I fall asleep in there, and they wake me up and says, come on. I'm thinking, we're going to go to the library at night. This is probably between 10 and midnight. Again, I got no idea what time it is. I just know it's dark. So he comes and get me, and he puts me in the handcuffs and takes me to the door and unlocks it and goes through the door. Now I'm back out in the GP area, but there's nobody out there because everybody at like probably 6 o'clock at night gets locked in their cells. So I think I'm going to the library, but he takes me up these stairs to a cell and unlocks it and puts me in there, and there's 12 guys in there, and they've all got their bunks. This is their cell. This is where they live, and there's a fan running. It's like an attic fan, but it's on the wall, and it's just running and blowing air through there, and it just seems like heaven on earth to me because this is Cancun, right? This isn't. It's
you've got 80 plus degree weather, close to 90, and humidity.
Yeah, and I'm like, take a shower. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's great. That sounds good. So I'm thinking, okay, this guy just brought me here for a shower. So I take the shower, and it's great. It's really nice. And I do realize that I do stink after 4 days. I stink pretty bad. And they're all telling me to take a shower. And the guards brought me here specifically to take a shower. And I'm so thankful. I think he's doing me a favor. So I go in there and I take the shower and I put my my issue clothes back on. It's all I have to my name right now. And I come out and they're playing soccer, like FIFO soccer, on their PlayStation. And so I sit down and start watching that. And they're like, hey, come over here and do these dishes. And I'm like, okay. I took a shower. It's the least I can do. I'll do your dishes. So I do the dishes and I go back to watching soccer, and I'm waiting for this guard to come and get me. And he never does come by. I'm just sitting there by the door watching the gate, if you will. It's not really a door, it's a gate. And I'm just watching for him to come and get me. And I'm trying to watch soccer and watch for him at the same time. And they're like, hey, come in here and wash out this shower. I'm like, well, okay, you let me take a shower. I suppose that this is a fair trade. I'm going to clean your shower now. And the shower is, let's say it's the size of the studio, but they've got a lot of water stored in it because they have running water. Obviously, I took a shower, but they never know when they're going to lose it. So they've got like 20 of these 5-gallon jugs of water stored up. And so to wash the shower, I have to move them. And they're obviously they're pretty heavy. So I have to move them twice, to get behind them. Again, these people are clean people. And I would learn that you would shower at least once a day, preferably twice. And so I go ahead and wash the shower, and I go back to watching soccer, and they're like, hey, come over here and do these other dishes. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do these other dishes, but then that's it. All I did was take a shower. I took a shower. I'm grateful. Thank you for that, but I'm not your slave. I'm going to do these, and then I don't want to hear more about it.
And they're speaking to you in English.
Some of them know enough English.
Yeah.
There's 12 guys in here. And this cell is 10 by 20. And it's got bunks in it. When I say bunks, it's a 3-inch slab of concrete hanging off the wall, 2 feet high, and then another one probably 5.5 feet high. 5 feet high, let's say. And they're stacked. So you have, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 cells. So 13 guys, 10 cells, 3 are on the floor. Well, guess who's number 13, right? I didn't realize at the time, but this was where I was from now on. At this point, I think I'm just dropped off for a shower. So I go and wash the dishes again. I'm like, okay, that's it. I go back to watching soccer and waiting for the guard to come and get me. And they're like, okay, now you sweep. And I'm like, I'm not sweeping. I'm not a slave. And they're like, they were pretty much all 12 looking at me. You sweep. And I'm like, guys, I'm not a slave. I took a shower. I'm grateful. I'm just waiting for my ride. And they're like, this is basically when the knife was pulled on me. They're like, you're going to sweep. And so I thought, this is when I had a moment of inflection. I really thought about it. I argued for a little bit. David, every cell has a Maracho, which is the boss. And every cell block has a boss. And then the prison has a boss. Well, I'm in this cell, and the Maracho is telling me, you're going to sweep, and then you're going to mop. And you're going to do what we tell you. I said, I am not a slave. I walk with Jesus Christ, and no man is a slave, and I'm not your slave. Get over it. And he goes, if you don't do what I tell you, you're going to get beat up really bad. And I'm like, sitting here thinking, here I am. This is not my game. This is their game. You want to die on this hill? I have no doubt that you could never be found or heard from again. And everybody that you know is going to wonder what happened to you. And I remember my credo, if you can't get out of it, get into it. And I certainly didn't want to get gigged. It hurts to get hurt. And I'm like, so you can be a slave for 8 days and go home, or you can argue that you're not a slave and probably never be heard from again. So I grabbed the broom. I said, I'm going to be the best cleaning lady you've ever had. And I went to sweeping. And I swept. And I swept in places they'd never had swept in a while. And swept. And then the next thing was I mopped. I mopped the whole entire floor. What I didn't realize was this was my new cell, and I was number 13.
Low man on the totem pole.
Yeah. So I was the slave. I literally was. So I would sweep and mop the cell twice a day. I would do all the dishes. I would wash the shower twice a day. And that was my lot in life. And I thought, okay, this still is better than solitary confinement. At least now I got decent food because, these guys have nothing better to do than learn how to cook. It's 3 meals a day. And in this place with 12 men, there was 3 shifts of supper and 3 shifts of breakfast and 3 shifts of lunch. So there was always food going on. So there was always dishes. And
now there's a kitchen set up too. They can cook and
they have a hot plate.
Okay.
I don't know if they're legitimately allowed to have a hot plate. I suppose they are. But they have one by whatever means. But I'm still thinking this is still better than solitary confinement. And it's still better than that last cell I was in because I got this fan and real running water. Mm-hmm. And this fan to me is just like the bee's knees.
Yeah, you're really beginning to learn to appreciate the small things.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll tell you, when you're praying for your pillow, thanking God for a pillow, you realize how far you fall.
Sure. Yeah, it makes you appreciate things.
I mean, thank you, God, for this pillow. Thank you for these glasses. Just
maybe that is why they put you in that one cell in the beginning, because it just sets your expectations so low that then after that you're like,
well, I think it's also a test. They're going to test you. They're going to push you just to see how far they can push you and what they can get away with. And if you comply, you're going to be in good shape. And if not, well, you might come out of there in a body bag.
Yeah,
or not at all.
And it sounds like your cell boss wasn't messing with you. He was just saying, no, this is the job that you're
I did not understand the hierarchy.
Right.
Whoever 12 was before you got there probably breathed a big sigh of relief saying, now we got a new guy in here that's going to take care of all this.
Well, 12 was the trainer, and I was the trainee, and It was us. It was the two of us. And I would say it was actually number 11 who was happy to see number 13.
And he's hoping to get to 10 because then he can get on a bunk.
So that first night in that cell, I was on the floor. I had no blanket. I had no pillow except my shoe. I used a shoe for a pillow that night. And I put my arms inside my new shirt and I froze and I did not sleep because that fan made it really windy in there. And everybody who had a bed was behind a curtain and probably on a pad and under blanket or blankets and probably pretty good sleeping. But not me. There was 2 other of us on the floor, probably 13 and 12 were or 12 and 11 were on the floor as well, but they had blankets, they had pillows, but they didn't have, they might have had pads. I guess they were on blankets. So still better. Remember, I hadn't slept the night before either, because they were pouring concrete outside the solitary at the federal jail. So that's 2 nights in a row I haven't slept. So, I didn't sleep that second night either. It was absolutely miserable. I used a shoe for a pillow, and that's not cool. Mm-hmm. So the next day comes, and I get up, and the first thing we do is we sweep and mop the floor. These guys are actually clean freaks. And, I'm doing the dishes, I'm doing the shower again, but now I have another job, and that is to go get food because 2 or 3 times a day, everybody heads to GP and they're putting out food. And the breakfast was some sort of a soup. I don't know what it was. I just saw hot, chunks of hot dog floating in it, and it looked really, really disgusting to me. And they also gave out Tang, and I think they gave out like rolls at lunch. So my job now, I had a new job, was to go stand in that line, and all of the harassment from all the other inmates looking at me and telling me to shave, because the Mexicans love to shave. They either no facial hair or extremely manicured facial hair, and I just had a plain old beard like you have now, Dave. It was not up to standard, so I'm being told to shave. Geez,
you're really taking shots at us today.
Yeah.
First KB with a
gringo. Hey, That's how my face generally looks. I'm not attacking you. I'm just giving you an example.
He just knows I have the waist to fill those pants. Not necessarily that I have a big waist, but one that will fill those pants. Hold them up on their own without the use of a plastic bag as a belt.
Apparently, I have the beard of a homeless man. So, okay.
I'm content to go.
Good to have you back, JR.
You're welcome. I'm content to go and just be in the cell and not interact with anybody else. I have 12 guys. I like 6 of them. 6 of them I don't like. I think they'd stab me if they could. Not that they would, but I don't think they had any endearment to me. And some of them were just absolutely salt of the earth, and I love them sincerely. But I didn't want to go out in the GP if I didn't have to, but I was forced to on these occasions to go get food. And they send you out with 1-gallon pails. You're going to come back with something. Afternoon trip, I'm going out and I bring back a gallon of coffee plus other things that I can't identify. One thing you got every time you went out in a pail was 4-inch tortilla skins, a full gallon of them. I mean, there must have been 100 every time because these people eat them with everything. So there's always, and they got a stockpile and they're doing stock rotation and all that. And so that's always every meal. So there's always like a food and a liquid and the skins always. So this is my new lot in life. This is what I'm going to be doing for 8 days. So that first morning I get a visit from the agent to the big cheese. The Maracho. And so he's got an enforcer with him, and they bring me outside the cell, and we're sitting there outside the cell, and he said, so you understand how it works. You're going to, so far you've just been working inside, but during the hours when you're not working in there, basically all daylight hours, you're going to be out here working from now on. Sweeping, mopping, hauling trash, working in the sewer, painting, just whatever we need to be done. Or you can pay. And I'm like, okay, so tell me what's the deal here? And he said, well, it's 50,000 pesos and you get a bed. And I'm like, okay, is there a bed here in this cell? He said, no, we would move you to a different cell. I said, I really like these guys. How much if I just don't have to work but don't get a bed? And he said, well, then it's 40,000 pesos. I said, okay. And so I started asking him a lot of questions. I said, I don't mean any disrespect, but this is extortion. He said, yeah, it is, but that's how it works. You know, we're capitalists. I'm like, okay, well, that's one definition of capitalism, I suppose. Mm-hmm. He goes, but yeah, I know what you're going through because this is exactly what I went through when I first came here.
And 40,000 pesos, what's that going to be in U.S. dollars?
$2,000.
Okay.
2,000.
So it's not chump change. I mean, this is a significant amount of money.
Well, everything's relative.
That's right.
I'll leave it at that. But I knew I was going to do it. So I said, well, are you sure there's not like a bunk in here? He said, well, there is a bunk in there, but the guy who had it had a cell phone and he's in the Punisher cell and he's not coming back for a week and a half. Now, remember, when you're in jail, you don't tell anybody how long you're going to be there. If they hear you're in and out, they probably assume, but you don't tell them. Mm-hmm. That was one bit of advice that Miguel Rosales told me was don't ever tell anybody how long you're in because you might, if they think you're going to be there for a while, that's one thing. But if they think you're in and out, they kind of going to resent you, right?
Also, they might rush to shake down as much money as they can get. I was
going to say they're going to milk you for all your work.
Right.
So I start making arrangements to get the money moved. But I also know that he's influential, and he speaks English, and he seems very amicable. So I'm asking him a lot of questions about general things and just trying to keep the conversation going and endear myself to him. And it was time that was well spent in my estimation because I'll tell you later why, but I just wanted to really visit with him. And I was very nice and smiling and just kept asking him questions like I would interview somebody on the radio. Just curiosity was just flowing. It's like, how many people are in here and all these questions. Can we do this? And what time is this? And all these questions. And so ultimately I make the phone call to get the money going. And that was a call to Vicky, and I called back to find out what's going on with that. And she said, well, I had told her, I said, get a hold of Gary Cummins, get a hold of Jacob Nushi, and tell him why I'm not making my payments. Right? And so when she called Jacob Nushi at Sullivan Bank, he's like, I'm sending the money right now. Just tell me where to send it. So I had wire information for a bank in Sugar Land, Texas. And so he tried to make that payment and needed an address. And so I had ended up call Vicky back again, say, where's the money? They don't have it yet. Where is it? Well, they need an address. So, okay, we'll call him Harry. What's the address? Well, they weren't going to produce that address. He says, well, then can we have a bank in Texas or in Mexico? And he's like, no. So we start brainstorming on other ways to get the money in. Like I said, everything seems like it's the first time ever. Right. Almost always. It always just seemed like it was the first time. And so Jacob Nushi's saying, well, what about PayPal? Or what about Cash App? And coming up with all these ideas on a way to transfer money. And Harry's like, well, Western Union would work. And so I got Jack on the phone. Western Union, he's trying to get in, and Western Union doesn't recognize the name of the bank.
Geez, you figure Western Union, they send money all over the world. That's what
Harry couldn't figure out. He's just like, his name's not Harry. I was told what happens in here stays in here, and I'm going to respect that. Mm-hmm. There's certain things you're not going to hear me talk about for my own safety and for my family's safety. So the names are changed. So we finally decide to go ahead and use PayPal. So PayPal is a way to send money if you buy something on eBay. The problem is that the sender has a privilege of resending the money if the goods or services aren't what the buyer expected. So that money's out there, and he comes around like that morning and says, okay, the money's there, you're good. The problem is you've got a problem. I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to be outside sweeping and mopping and hearing the word gringo a million times and all this. And he says he needs to release that money. So long story short, Jacob can't release the money. So he has a letter notarized that says he relinquishes the money. And that's not good enough. The money's sitting there. And so PayPal finally responds and says, okay, go back and try again. There should be a relinquish button there. That, I'm satisfied with the goods and services now. And so that happens. However, PayPal still holds on the money for like 3 or 4 more days. So we open up a new front. Again, now Topsider sends that money, and by then they've come up with a bank in Mexico. So Topsider sends the money to the attorney, Miguel, just like we had done the money for the $12,000 for the attorney and the plea bargain and the court costs. So he sends that money to my attorney again, who then is able to wire it that night to a Mexican bank account. And it's a lot different in Mexico. You know what he needed? He needed to know the name of the bank and the account number. And that was it. Mm-hmm. No names, no addresses, no nothing. So that money gets in, and now guess what? I'm in a bunk. I don't have pad. And I shortened that story down to 5 minutes, but it actually ended up taking like 3 days. Right. It was such chaos. I was just going crazy, but they were taking me at my word that the money was coming. So they let me borrow that bunk that in that existing cell. They let me borrow it because Harry took me at my word, had seen that I was trying, knew the money was coming. So he told the Maracho in that cell, the money's coming, let him borrow that bunk. So they did. Now, that put me behind a curtain, but they took all his stuff and stacked it over in the corner of that bunk, and I wasn't going to touch it. It was somebody else's stuff. So I wasn't on a blanket. I wasn't under a blanket. I was just behind a curtain now. I didn't have a pillow. My attorney, that second day I was in there, brought me some things. I had yellow shorts, yellow shirts, 3 pairs of underwear, and a roll of toilet paper. The toilet paper would be my pillow. 4 rolls, and not like big 4 Charmin rolls. It's like, you ever seen like RV toilet paper? It's not big. It was a great pillow, though.
It's because it goes in an RV, trying to conserve space.
It was a great pillow, and I was very, 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 very glad to have it. So I'm up off the floor now, and I'm not shivering.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
So it's 8:52. You want to stick around? You got time to stick around after the hour starts? Because I don't.
It's your call.
Well,
it's entirely up to you.
You can do that. I mean, because I don't think we're going to get.
Bernsey, you drive this ship. I'm going to tell you I have a 10 o'clock meeting in the Villages, and we're going to be drinking at Encore tonight. Well, I can't. I'm on probation, but I told Paisley I'd buy him a drink.
Yeah, I got a commission meeting at 10, but I can stay till around 9:30.
Yeah, well,
there we go.
We'll keep you over
if you want to.
Yeah, that's fine.
And again, if you guys got questions, I know that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm letting you go because I just listen.
So I'm up off the floor, but I don't have a pad. I don't have a blanket. I don't really have a pillow other than a 4-pack of small toilet paper. So sleeping on concrete is new to me. I don't recall ever sleeping on concrete. Maybe I have, but
concrete floor in your house. You told me that story.
Even then, I was on a cot, probably.
Right.
Because, Dave, we built our own house, Vicki and I, at night and on weekends, and it took a while. And there for a while, we were sleeping on the floor until we brought. Long story.
I thought maybe you were in trouble.
Doesn't matter. So that's what Bernsy's alluding to. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a big butt. Evidently, I got no butt because I'm lying on my back, and pretty soon it's hurting real bad. The skin at my tailbone is getting pinched, and so sleeping like this is like a rotisserie. You have to turn over a little bit and try to find somewhere else, to put your weight. And this goes on through the night, and it's not good sleep. It's quite miserable. You sleep for a little bit, and then you kind of wake up in pain, and you got to move, and you got to kind of turn over, and it's not good sleep. Now, these guys that are on the floor, I think they're on pads or they're used to it or whatever, but this is new to me. I'm not used to sleeping on it. So I'm talking with Harry, and they're setting up a new bunk for me in his cell. This was not an easy sell for me to go because I was liking some of these guys I was with, but I was number 13 there, and in the new cell, for starters, the very first night I was done doing chores. Once that first money showed up in PayPal, even though it hadn't been relinquished, I'd already done my last chore. I had no more chores to do, so I was already better off. But I was still struggling with good sleep and having a bunk and having just even a sheet or a blanket would have been great. I didn't have any of that.
So at that point, your trainer had to go back to doing all the jobs again?
Exactly.
So number 12, this was a bad day for him.
It was.
He suddenly was back.
He had to know it was coming. But I'm not sleeping well. I don't have any blankets, so I have extra shirts now, and I'm putting my arms in these shirts, and he brought me a towel as well for my shower. So now I've got a towel for my legs. I'm kind of making do with a blanket of a homemade blanket, the towel over my legs, and my arms are just basically tucked into a shirt, and my head's on a roll of toilet paper, and I'm rotating through the night, and that's the extent of it. I've got other shirt and underwear I put under my head to kind of make it a little bigger pillow, but this goes on for 2 or 3 nights, and he's like, I think you might want to come down to our cell because we have a chef, we got a cell for you. It's got a pad. It's got a fan. It's got a curtain. We have a servant. You're not going to have to do anything. You won't even have to go out to get your own food. And I went down and looked at it. And this is a 10 by 10. It's a lot smaller, and there's 8 of us. But I have a bunk, and in fact, I'm over the Maracho. I'm not just over I'm over the Maracho of as far as I can tell, the prison. I'm in with the big dogs.
And they've got a chef.
Yeah, well.
And a servant.
This is like Goodfellas, like when they're in the prison and the mafia guys are like making spaghetti sauce.
And he's cutting the garlic with a razor blade of all things in a prison.
That's right.
So when you ask me Friday, did I eat well? The answer is I put on 1.5 pounds.
Oh, man.
And these guys are really good cooks. They have not much else to concern themselves with, so they all become pretty good cooks anyway. But the big cheese made sure that he had the best cook in the entire penitentiary.
Now, when you made this payment to get in there, is that just once, or is this a recurring?
That was
payment?
one of my questions to Harry. Is this how often is this? And it was a one-time deal. Whether you're in here for a week or a decade, this is it, just once. Yeah, good question. That was my question too.
Right.
So I did move down to that new cell. So I spent 3 nights in the first cell and 5 nights in the last cell. And once I met Harry, he was taking me around and showing me stuff. And once the money had gone through, I said, now can I finally go to the library? And he's like, yeah. And we made a beeline to the library. And there was 3 full shelves of books in English. And I saw Charles Dickens. And it was Oliver Twist, A Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations, and Christmas Carol. And I grabbed that book and checked it out immediately. Basically because I always wanted to read Tale of Two Cities, and because it was 3 inches thick, and I thought, now I'm going to have a little bit taller pillow.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And my nose was in that book. It was in the book for 2 solid days in the first cell, and the last, frankly, 4 full days in the second cell. And I was just constantly reading. And my nose was always in the book. And I had my own bunk. I was sitting there on a pad, my head on basically my folded towel. And I did pay 180 pesos to get a blanket. It was really heavy, and I never used it more than once. I actually just kind of folded it up and used it as a pillow because it got a little bit warmer in those latter days, and I didn't really need a blanket. I had the fan on me, and the thing about fans is I pack them in my suitcase. We had fans at the Rio down in Plycar because of the noise. I love sleeping to a fan. So that first night in the punishment cell, it was quiet. Well, it wasn't quiet. I take that back. There was people on either side, and they were yucking it up through the night. And my Laotian friend told me, he says, you're not going to sleep here because they just do this through the night. They're howling and screaming and yucking it up and carrying on and just making all sorts of ruckus. And it was true, but having not slept that night before, I was able to fall asleep probably for 4 or 5 minutes before they whisked me off to the new cell. So
when you were there, did you see, like, it sounds like everything works pretty well and there's a system, but was there, do you see like violence or anybody?
Not at all.
Everybody was getting along? Not
at all. I will tell you that in my first cell, the Maracho did not speak any English, and he was definitely the boss. Everybody did what he said, and he had he had access to Google Translate. And so he typed in a bunch of stuff. He said, there's some rules. What happens in here stays in here, and you're going to shower every day before bed. They want you showering before you go to bed so that the cubes stay clean, especially since it wasn't even my cube. He thought the guy was going to be coming back, and I don't know if he did or not. I would later find out through Harry that he probably wasn't coming back. But one of the things he said was, he wants to sleep with you. And I looked at him, and he looked at a guy, and I grabbed the communication device, and I said, you're joking. And he said, no, I see how he's looking at you. And that's when I realized that I think that's actually true. I think he did, because he was looking at me a lot. Yes, sir?
I'm just going to jump in. We'll take a break here. We'll come back and talk some more with JR. Very riveting story. I wonder.
Kind of leaving us on a cliffhanger here.
That's the whole point.
That's good radio right there.
I wonder how
when you get back.
Wonder how well. I wonder how well stocked that trip's going to be next year.
That's right.
9:00 on the Midwest Coast. JR, Dave Maupin, KB. It's the Daily Show on the key. This is your chance to get involved in community radio Lake of the Ozarks with 89.3 The Key. We're right back here now at 9:08. Thank you for joining us. Kind of an interesting tale that we've been listening to for the last, couple of hours. We spent some time with JR on Friday, and Dave Maupin was with us as well. And Dave and JR are in the studio with us. We talked the last hour with JR being in the Penitentiary in Mexico. And we've got about 20 minutes or so before everybody needs to scoot. So we want to get right back into the story and kind of pick things up where JR was talking about someone who may have had a little interest in him.
Well, he was one of them who was on the floor. And I had not really noticed it until he said that. And then I started realizing that his eyes were on me a lot. And, one time I was in there reading and he was in there and it was just the two of us. And he I don't know what the look would be, but he's like, just,
I think we're alone now.
Yeah, pretty much. And I just put my eyes right back in the book without acknowledging him. And I'd say it's true what the Maracho said. He wasn't anybody that was, he's probably my size. He wasn't really a threat, but it was uncomfortable,
sure.
To make eye contact with him or to, feel in the periphery his eyes on me. And so when I was basically, let's call him Harry, wanted me to come to his cell, that was one of the factors in leaving that cell, was I didn't have to deal with that.
That would have been the only factor for me. I would have been out the door, standing there with my stuff in hand, ready to go.
So I'm in a 10 by 20 cell, and there's 13 of us, and I'm going to go to a 10 by 10 cell where there's 8. So it's a lot tighter, a lot more confining in the new cell. And I will tell you that in both cells, the toilet is always in the bathroom, and there's no running water to the toilet, but you have a lot of water stockpiled, open 5-gallon buckets with a gallon pail with which to flush.
Right, you pour it in there to flush.
Yeah, so even though you don't have a lid and a seat, the bowl itself is always perpetually clean. So it's really not misery. It's just not. They're very clean people. In the new cell, they wanted showers twice a day. Okay, suits me.
You're in a smaller cell, a little tighter.
And I feel like I'm with, this isn't just the boss of the cell, the boss of the block, or this is the boss of the prison, and he's literally below me. I'm over his bunk, so I'm super careful not to spill soda or something like that.
Right.
And I'm just in better company. And now in this, there's enforcers in here. There's a servant, a cook, the agent, the Maracho, and I'm in with the big dogs. There's nobody more powerful in this prison. So now I don't feel so bad about going outside because I take my book and sit outside the door there, the gate, and enjoy the respect from the passersby.
Yeah.
No longer did I hear the word gringo. Gringo, gringo, gringo. So my tale, it's a lot better at the end than at the beginning. And it's a lot harder on people on the outside, my family, than it is me. Very frankly, it was a lot harder on my family than it was on me because I knew what I was up against.
They had no idea.
They did not know if they'd ever even see me again,
Right.
So I want to keep that in perspective. Also, what you said about that trip, I'm not trying to sabotage the trip. I'm just trying to relay my story and set the truth on what happened. And I KRMS has gone to other locations besides Mexico in the past, They've gone to DR and other places, so it's not like there's only Mexico. Jane Kelly shot me a text message, a very long, nice text message. It says, America has some protectorates that are really, really nice. U.S. Virgin Islands.
That's where I go.
I've gotten, I shouldn't have even said that because I've gotten so many from so many people, so many extremely thoughtful. The girls over at Remax have just been great. The girls over at Keller Williams have just been great. Just so many thoughtful text messages, and they just keep coming. I shouldn't even start talking about who all I've heard from because it's just I won't be able to include everybody. There's no way, and they just keep coming. I'm so grateful and so humbled. Well, one of the guys I meet. And again, he goes, in this cell, we're like bookworms. We're all kind of just reading all day. And so it's going to be a lot quieter cell. In the first cell, there was a lot of traffic in there. People were coming in and partying and playing soccer and all this stuff. It was a lot quieter in the second cell. But there was a guy in there who, young kid, had no business being in there. He had actually been in one of the federal prisons. And remember, this is a state prison. Quintana Roo is the state that Cancun's in. This is really just a state prison. But there are some mean, like maximum security federal prisons in Mexico. There's like 3 in Mexico City. And I think there's one in Chihuahua, and I think there's one in Oaxaca. And so he had been in one, and he said, this is way better. This is way better. And he was he was really... another guy that I think God put in my life was this kid. We'll call him Danny. And he said something to me on the second day. And remember, I had just spent like 3 days of solitary confinement asking God, why am I here? Why did you put me here? Tell me why I'm here. There's got to be a reason. I don't remember where it is in the Bible. It's like Proverbs, I think, maybe, that there's a line that says, lean not on your own understanding, but put your faith in God. He'll guide your path. And so that's always been one of my favorites. I think it's Proverbs 2:3 or something like that, 2:3-5. And basically it's like, lean not on your own understanding. And it's like, when something happens and I don't understand it, I have to accept it. God has a plan, and a lot of times you're not going to know what the plan is. And I knew this was that situation. I'm in this prison, and I think it's the end of the world, but God did it for a reason. Has it manifested yet? I don't know. But what he said, I just thought was just unbelievable. He said, and this is the next day after I kind of told him what happened. And he's a young kid. I mean, I know he wasn't 30 years old, but he was basically my servant, or our servant, not mine, but ours. He's always like, anything you need, just tell me, I'll go get it. Here, 50 pesos, go get me this, right? Not that I took advantage of it, but he said, this is the second day after he met me, and I told him what happened. He goes, I think God did not want you going to St. Louis because you would have been killed. And I said, Danny, that makes as much sense as anything. Because I know that when I got out of the airport and into my car, I was going to be hitting I-70 like Steve McQueen. I was so ready to be home. So it's totally feasible that Danny hit the nail on the head with that. It's totally feasible that I could have been killed had my family gone to St. Louis. And that wasn't the only prophetic thing he said. He said, God talks to me sometimes. And I'm like, I'm jealous because I don't ever hear, God's voice. He says, I do. And it was like the day before I left. He said, God told me to tell you that don't just pray when you're in need. Pray when you're feeling blessed too. He says, you're not praying enough. Pray more often. That's what he told me to tell you. Don't just come to him whenever you got a problem. You should always be going to him. And I said, what are you doing here? You are wise beyond your years. So now he says, I'm going to pray for you. And guess what? I'm praying for him. He's in my prayers now.
Well, so you know how it works. Somebody gets into a jam and they do what's called a foxhole prayer.
Oh, yeah.
And you get me out of this, and I'll go to church every Sunday, and I promise to be a better human being and love all animals and things like that. And then as you get through it and get back, you forget all about the promise that you made.
Absolutely. Totally.
And that's the whole point of this is it's you don't want to make a promise. It's not like you have to keep a promise, but you want to remember him every day. I mean, that's the first thing I do every morning when I get up.
Mm-hmm. So eventually you're going to reach the day where you're going to get out of there.
Me too.
How does this kind of end up? Is it just kind of like they come and get you and then you're like, this is it? And everyone realizes suddenly that you're going to be leaving?
So my hearing is on a Tuesday. So it's, they have remember I would have been basically a servant to the prison. So one of the jobs would have been to have been like a courier. I wouldn't have been a courier because I don't know any Spanish, but they have kids waiting up by the security gate who, when something comes through the administration area, they basically need a courier to go to the cell to grab the inmate. And so this happens that day, 3 or 4 times. But the first one is to come and get me. And we're going to my hearing. And so I go to the hearing. It's the same deal. I'm taken to the garage and put in handcuffs and put in the paddy wagon. And there's like 4 of us this time who have trial that day. And we go to the courthouse. It's not far.
Lights and sirens again?
Not this time.
Okay.
Good question. I was wondering if I was going to get that, but no, maybe. I don't remember. I don't remember candidly. So they put me in a holding cell outside the courtroom again. They take me in there, and there's a problem with the recording equipment. It's not recording. It's supposed to have a 9 o'clock hearing, so after about 30 minutes, they come and get me and put me back in the cell. And this is interesting. I don't have a book. I don't have anything to do, and I don't know how long it's going to be. This room, I told you Friday, is a 6x6, and on the floor is a seam, like maybe 2 different pores or just a control joint. And so there's basically 2 panels on the floor. They're both 3x6, and so I start with it's 6x6. It's not a big area. It's really, really tiny. Super tiny, 6x6. And so I walk and like you're walking in snow. I saw the letter A on the floor, and I walked the letter A. And then I saw the letter B on the floor, and I walked the letter B. And I went all the way through the alphabet, and then I started with the number 1, and then 2, and then 3. I saw the number on the floor, and then I walked it. And it sounds stupid. And I imagine if you're walking down the hallway and you look in this 8x8 mesh window, I'm just going crazy in there all over the place. And I must look insane. But I get up to the number 33 when they come and get me and take me back. And they've got the equipment running. And so I have the hearing. And I knew I was going to be getting out because my attorney told me what the judge said before the break, that when I come back, we will celebrate Jonathan's liberty. Said it in Spanish. We didn't hear it. We didn't know what he said, but that's what my attorney said he said, and that was the sweetest sound I had heard in a very long time.
Sure,
for sure. So we do the hearing, and you hear the gavel, and go back into that holding cell. Now, that doesn't mean I'm released that instant. I have to go back to the penitentiary for the rest of the day to finish out the day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have an overdue library book also.
That's right.
Right. So
that's exactly right. And I did read Tale of Two Cities, and I read Christmas Carol, and I was about a third the way through Oliver Twist. And I found out that once you've read one Charles Dickens,
they're pretty similar.
They're all identical. It's all the same thing. The word countenance, he uses it 4 times in one page. It's like, just say face. I mean, why does it need to be countenance every time? So
I think he got paid by the page. I think that's one of the deals.
But I didn't mind going back to the penitentiary because I had pesos there. Remember that I had 2 people sending me the extortion money twice,
right?
40,000 pesos. Well, I had 80,000 pesos, and by virtue of having a bunk, they only took 50,000 of it and handed me the other 30,000 pesos.
I think it's really interesting that they're actually very fair business people. Like they're not trying to take advantage of, like, we had a deal, so we're going to stick with the original deal.
Totally. I mean, you'd have never thought I'd have walked out of there with 30,000 pesos. Like, they gave it to me in currency, and it's super thick. It's like 3 inches thick. And I'm like, can I walk out of here with this? I'm like, yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Isn't it? Is that honor among thieves, David?
Right. I mean, just like I said, compared to a U.S. prison, like that would be a huge problem.
So, actually, I asked my attorney, I said, I've made a couple of friends in both of my cells here, and I can tell they don't have any money. Am I going to knock the planet out of orbit if I were to share some money with them? He said, and this is in the courtroom, I'm kind of whispering it to him. He said, I think that would be a good thing to do, and it would probably come back as good karma to you. So when I did get back, I happened to be alone with these guys a couple of times, and I was able to pass them like 2,000 pesos each, and it was just like all the money in the world to them.
This is like Danny? Are we talking about Danny?
And another guy that I had met in the first cell who was basically, there's Bible study twice a day, and he was always in the Word, and he was always going to that, and he knew some English, and he was always asking me questions, and I just kind of liked him. Like I said, I liked half the guys in the first cell. Mm-hmm. They were really good.
That's partly why you were reluctant to switch cells.
That's a lot of it. Well, yeah, because I knew all these guys. Familiarity is important. I really didn't want to go in and see 5 fresh faces.
Right.
Yeah, but the
one fresh face you could have done without.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't need his face anymore. And I knew that it would help me on the outside by virtue of being in with the big dogs,
right?
The most powerful people in the place.
Yeah, that was a smart move.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back. Not that 30,000 pesos is all the money in the world, and by this time it's much less. But because I had been buying, one of my favorite things was milk and Oreos. I could get Oreos and I could get leche. So it's like I eat that like cereal when I'm at home anyway, and that was like heaven on earth to be eating Oreos in a cereal bowl.
So now you're back. You know you've got to kill time to finish out your day. Is this just like you're almost bouncing off the walls, like you can't wait to get out of there?
So Harry asked me how my hearing went. I wasn't going to lie to Harry. I had always been square with him about everything. And he, me, so far as I could tell, he had been square with me about everything. And, you know, I'm like asking my attorney in jail, can I tell him, you know, that I'm basically getting out tonight? And he goes, I wouldn't say anything. But the minute I got back, Harry asked me, so what happened? How much longer are you here? I said about 12 hours. And so he didn't say anything to anybody. Nobody knew. And he, you know, there was no problem. The only thing was they were supposed to come and get me at 10 o'clock so I could be out of there at 11, but they didn't come and get me until after midnight. And so I imagine Vicky being under the understanding that I would be out by 11, and here it is midnight and she still hasn't heard anything. I know she's freaking out. So I ask Harry to get a message to Vicky. Okay, they're just now picking me up. And he followed it up with, he'll be out in no time. Well, that's not true, because they took me to the administration office and there was 6 of us leaving, and we all had to fill out a form one at a time in quadruplicate with our name and our address, and then another series of fingerprints. And it ended up being like a 90-minute process. It was just excruciating. And I think it's by design. I think everything is designed just to really torment the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. I really believe that. I believe that. I didn't walk out of that prison until 2 o'clock in the morning in the roughest neighborhood in Cancun. And one other guy was walking out. Well, I take that back. There was 3 other guys, but they were all together walking out with, 2. And we were all 3 walking out at the exact same time. And the other 2 were together. And they had like a family of people waiting out there with cameras. And I don't even know how long they'd been in there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they were really happy, and they were rejoicing and taking pictures and hugging and kissing and all these things. And I'm standing there looking in every direction for Miguel, who, as part of his service, is there to pick me up. And there's no Miguel, and I'm like freaking out. I'm freaking out a little bit. I see a payphone, and I can't even imagine how to use a Mexican payphone. I did have some metallic pesos with me, and I may have been able to figure it out, but I wasn't sure what to do. I was thinking about, okay, do I go back to the door of the penitentiary and just sit next to it until light comes up and then maybe regroup? But after a couple of minutes, frankly, of Miguel tormenting me from his car, decides to get out and walk up, and I see somebody walking towards me, and I'm praying it's Miguel, and it was. And so
he was just waiting in his car?
Yeah, just being a dick. I think. I believe. So we get in the car. I mean, he's just tormenting me, I guess. So we get in the car, and I'm like, let's text Vicky that I'm out. And he's like, well, let's wait a minute here. And I'm like, I'd really like to text her now. We stop by his house. I'm like, what in the world? He gets out and goes inside his house, and I'm locking the doors on the car. I'm like looking in all directions. What is going on here? This is not right. I was wanting to be back to the hotel.
He's trying to let you savor this moment.
Come to find out, that's where my passport was.
Oh, okay.
So it was a necessary stop. Plus, he needed to go to the bathroom because he'd been sitting outside the penitentiary for like 3 hours waiting for me to walk out. So we get back to the Renaissance, and Vicky and Jack come downstairs and meet us in the drop-off area there, and visit with Miguel for a while. And he's familiar with Ozark, and he's got a wife who's American, and she's in Texas, and he's going to open a practice there. And that day he got his green card or whatever, and so says he's coming up here. We go up to the room, and I told him, don't book a flight until you see me. don't book a flight. Do not jinx me here.
Right.
The minute you book a flight, I'm going to be stuck in there some more. So I immediately, my sister's just bawling. So she'd been worried. So I get on the phone with Lori and settle her down. And then I go on Expedia, and this is like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning Thursday now, and I think it's February 2, and so I'm booking flights. 3:29, that same Frontier flight leaves Cancun, so I'm going to try it again. 3 of us. I don't care about the flights that Vicky and Jack already have. I relinquished mine by virtue of being arrested, but theirs are still good, but I don't care. I just want 3 flights, and the luggage and everything. Another $1,500. And I get through security. This time, the bag goes through. They didn't even slow down the conveyor. It just went through. And it was like they didn't even look at it practically. So I don't know, you've ever been to Cancun airport, you get through security, and now you're in a duty-free area, a shopping area, and then it puts you out into the gates and the terminals, and you walk down a long corridor, and then there's a T. You can go left, you can go right, and we always fly out from the right, actually downstairs usually. And as soon as I take that right, I see 2 National Guardsmen, and I look at the name tag on the first one, and I can't remember what his name was. Jack's probably going crazy when he hears this, but I recognize the name, like Estrada, let's say, and I look him in the eyes, and he's wearing a mask, and I recognize him. And I smile, and I see him smiling behind his mask, and we fist bump as we meet in the corridor. And then I turn around, I'm like, I can't believe it. I know him. He was cool. He was one of the cool ones.
Right.
And I turn around and look at him, and Jack's turning around, and Vicky's turning around as we were walking away from each other, and they're both turning around and looking at us. And I'm heading down to the gate, and life is good.
And Mr. Estrada said, as JR and his family walked off to get on their plane, that's one lucky mofo.
They did call me Funny Gringo. Funny Gringo was one of my nicknames in there.
Well, Funny Gringo, it's good to have you back on U.S. soil, brother.
Thank you for listening.
Let me ask you a quick question. Any opportunity to get the family all sitting down, and does everybody need to, and I think I might have asked you this before.
You did.
Did kind of debrief a little bit, or?
There were certain things they didn't want me to talk about, and they were worried that I would. Stuff that I'm not going to talk about because, and it got a little touch and go. When we were having that discussion, Jack was like, don't be saying this, the Mexican cartel's here too.
Yeah.
So, other than that, we're praying as a family twice a day. Good. I mean, Vicky and Jack have always prayed, and I've kind of listened in, but now I'm there praying with them. That's one significant.
Are you the spiritual leader of your home?
No, that's Vicky.
Oh.
Vicky's the mother of the century. She's got Jack.
The hell
Jack prays.
And we never even got in. And I know Vicky and Jack won't want to come on and discuss their role in all of this, but the worst part of it all is just sitting there not knowing.
Yeah, they had it worse than I did.
They had to go through.
Yeah, my family had it worse than I did, I believe.
Well, gee whiz. It's been one of those interesting interviews that I'll always remember. One of those places where you know where you were and you know what you were talking about. And you know what was going on when somebody says, February the 3rd or February the 7th. I'm going to know exactly where I was between 8 and 10 both days talking with you and Dave. And I'm glad Dave was here, and certainly glad that you're here. And to all the people that have supported you and come through for you, God bless all of those wonderful people. Love you all. And we'll just give you some downtime. Maybe the one thing that I would encourage people to do is I know everybody wants to hear the story and everybody wants to get to see JR and welcome him home. Give him a little room. Give him some time, and when he's ready,
I would like for people to come out to Encore tonight at 5:30.
Okay.
And we can have. I think there might even be a table for the 3 of us if people have any questions. And frankly, after tonight, I just soon not talk about it anymore.
Yeah, let's just get it all out.
Be nice. Yeah. Work the room. Maybe what we'll do is we'll just corner off part of the room and let people come. And I think everybody is just, they want to see you. They want to actually be able to reach over and touch you like that and know that you're actually in the good old US of A.
I appreciate you, Kevin and David, and I appreciate the time. And thank you so much for all of this.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely, sir. 100%. 9:33. We'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll I guess if folks want to call in and talk, you're more than welcome to do that. 573-633-5395. The Key Radio Community Hotline will be open if you'd like to maybe reflect on a little bit of what you've heard here on the 3rd and on the 7th. And yes, sir?
One more piece of advice.
Yes.
If you're going to go to Oktoberfest with the commish, watch out for your cornhole, bud.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the main lesson.
A lesson well learned and well taken.